Hey, everybody, before we start the podcast, I just wanted to let you know that I have been very, very busy and my psychic stand-up show and everything is going great. So I'm having a little trouble managing time. So I made the decision that from now on, the podcast will come out every 2 weeks instead of every week. That wasn't an easy decision to come to. Maybe it'll change back. But for now, that really works for me. So I hope you'll stick with me for 2 weeks at a time instead of one. So enjoy today's show, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. One of our favorites is back. Derek Condit from Mystical Wares is here today. Oh, I forgot to do my housework. Join the Patreon. Come learn tarot or whatever you want to learn. Join my email list at karenrontowski.com or psychicstandup.com. Psychic stand-up shows all over the place, especially now. Check out my Instagram. I'm going to be in Du Bois, Pennsylvania, Washington, Pennsylvania. I'm going to be in Florida. I'm all over the place, Arizona, blah, blah, blah. Let's get to it. Derek, I don't know if you listen to a lot of podcasts, but I get completely frustrated when like the first 5 minutes is an ad.
No, I don't actually. I wish I had more time to listen to podcasts. But yeah, I get what you're saying on that one. I get a little frustrated.
Yes, because I'm always driving and I'm like, I don't know if I want to listen. You have to convince me right away. I don't want to buy your shavers or your coffee. So before we even get into, because today I wanted to talk to you about Sasquatch, about Bigfoot stuff. But first of all, so this is coming out in May, and I believe the all kinds of stuff, the change of the country is supposed to start in April, I think. Do you have any insight on this, or are you just kind of let's just take it a day at a time, or are you excited? I'm kind of excited. I feel like the revolution is close.
Yeah, I come at it from a maybe odd perspective, but I try not to, air quotes here, look at the future too hard, because it is so malleable, of course, and changes as we all realize stuff and make decisions. So I kind of ride the wave and go with the flow and just look far enough ahead to where, if there's going to be a speed bump that I need to know about, I do. So like you mentioned, I don't, or like I said, I don't listen to a bunch of podcasts, so I haven't heard what the word is out there on the realm. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'll just tell you, in the Matrix, to have fun with it, I am picking up on all kinds of goodies going on this year. So we'll have to see, where it ends up.
Yeah, and I think the goodies are things that would scare other people, and you and I are like, yeah, let's change things. Let's get some change going, And also, I love that attitude, because I think I met you either during the lockdown or before the lockdown, and, talk about just put yourself in the right business. You sailed right through. In fact, I believe when I first met you, you were getting a bigger place. Like, you didn't really hit a bump there, did you?
Oh, that drama that happened a few years ago. Oh yeah, no, we don't. I didn't acknowledge that at the time. We didn't play the mask game. We didn't limit that. It wasn't a part of my reality on any level. So yes, we went from, I don't know, like 1,000-something square feet to over 8,000 square foot building for Mystical Wares, which is here in Mount Vernon, Washington. And literally during that what I just keep going like drama, Karen, we had Elle and I show up. They didn't literally make it past 5 feet in the front door. And I was there at the time. They stopped, felt the whole overwhelming, in a good way, but they didn't know how to describe it, sensation hit them in a place like this. We chatted at that door. I'm not kidding you. I have it on video. Not 5 feet from the front entrance, they stopped. They said, "Oh no, we're all good here. We don't have anything we need to do." In so many words, thanked me, walked out. That was the only experience from that time that we had, and it was all positive.
Wow. Yeah. I think I know that I went up to your store just before the crossover, and man, you were busy, but what a beautiful store. Everybody be sure you check out Mystical Wares, especially for your shungite. And if you don't know about that, listen to a prior episode with Derek and I. In fact, that was one of the first things I met you, is because you were talking about shungite around your bees, that the bees are getting confused when they fly because of so much 5G and electromagnetic stuff. And that when you put a little bit of shungite dust by by their hives, they would step in it and they could navigate home. Well, that podcast, somebody in Pennsylvania passed it on to their councilman, and it somehow went out to all these beekeepers in Pennsylvania. And I thought it came from the state. Somehow somebody had passed it on, and I thought they must be wondering why something called Paranormal Karen was being pushed there. But I think you did your duty, and we got the information out.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. That's a team effort on everybody's part, so that's fantastic. I get so many people contact me that's hard to remember. There have been individuals from Pennsylvania, but I had not heard this story before. But that's fantastic. So I'm glad people are, and we give it away too, Karen. We have for years. So anybody interested that's a beekeeper, wants to be a beekeeper, knows a beekeeper, you can go to mysticalwares.com, and on our Shungite Beehive webpage that's there, you can request free Shungite powder and nuggets from us. We're about love and energy. You got to help save the bees, you save us. We've given that out for free for I don't know how many years now.
Yes, and also if anybody, I'm sure it's all at mysticalwares.com, but also just find Derek's YouTube channel and watch all the stuff. I think it's even old videos that I remember that were so good. So all the bee stuff, pass it on, folks. We need more bees. And other than that, we're in wacky weather right now. We went from 70 degrees to 9 inches of snow today. So, so the world needs some help. So, Derek, I was in Oregon, and they had, nobody talked about it, but they had Bigfoot statues. They had a Bigfoot store. They had all this stuff. And I thought it was so funny because if you ask somebody that was like, yeah, I don't know about it. And I was like, well, his paw print is all over. What has been happening up where you are?
Oh yeah, and that's so. I'm actually residing for the listeners now because I know you know up in, of course, the Pacific Northwest. So the Puget Sound, excuse me, the Puget Sound region, and that's the waterway that we live near of Washington State. So I'm really about an hour and a half from the border of Canada. So way up top left on the map of the U.S. Just to give that visualization of how far north, and from there all the way down to California is Sasquatch, Bigfoot. I flop between the names. So I'll kind of go between, but I'm talking about the same entity, of course, again, for the listeners. They're all over the planet, first of all, but there's a whole lot of them down the west coast of the U.S. that, again, from my neck of the woods here in the Cascade Mountains, and we can get into this in a little bit if you want, Karen, but down where my dad had 40-something acres, and he's literally an ex-NSA spy, didn't know about Bigfoot, had a sighting down on his property. Oh yeah. So then, but it's going on. So there are, and again, we can get into that if you want to, but there's people all over the place that realize it and see it. And they've been around longer than us.
Now there's I don't want to put an emotion or an adjective on this, but in Pennsylvania, they have some terrifying stories about Bigfoot. There was one guy, this was in I think the 50s or 60s, the guy's car got stuck, and he finally got to a place where he was like, well, I'm just going to get out, because, out there, no street lights, probably where you are, that's not LA or New York, it's very, very dark. And he waited and waited, and no car came by, and he decided he was going to just get up and run. I'm just going to get out of the car, it's dark, I'm going to run along the side of the road, find a house, something. And he got out, and he turned around and started running, and literally hit a wall that was a Bigfoot, and it beat the crap out of him. He was in the hospital for quite a long time. And I had interviewed a guy that went back and really tried to get a hold of him, and he didn't want to talk about it. So it wasn't like a guy. In fact, at one point, the guy's wife called and said, he's back in trauma. Can you not call us anymore? Because it just was this awful experience, which I guess getting beat up is no matter who it is, whether it's Bigfoot or anybody. But then sometimes you hear stories about them actually protecting people in their cabins. How do you feel? Is it just like an animal and it's all over the place?
It's like and I'll zoom out a little bit metaphysically here. It's like any other entity. They can be good, bad, or indifferent at any given time, and then that's relative on perspective. And I'll say if that Sasquatch was really angry, the guy would have been in pieces. I mean, they're obviously that big. Right. So no, I mean, it's like anything else. Aren't the Sasquatch all love and light and happy and handing out flowers? Well, let's zoom out from that, talking about cats.
Yeah.
Our modern house cat. Okay, well, come on. I've had some with some pretty pissy attitudes and some that won't get off my lap and love me. So it's all over the place, to be honest. That's why I don't give, the stories. If you visit a neighborhood anywhere in the U.S. that, let's say, has crime where it's okay, well, let's say a gangster neighborhood or something like that, you're not going to come out of there with happy stories more than likely or not. So it's all over the gamut is kind of what I'm getting at here. There's, different ones. So, but yeah.
And when people ask you the typical questions, I like, well, why have we caught one or, or that kind of thing? They are, like you were saying, entity. I like them being referred to like that because they're interdimensional creatures, aren't they?
Oh yeah. Excuse me. I'll go kind of quickly here to share my understanding of them, of what they are. And they're us before we became us, before we were modified genetically to become the vehicle we call human.
Oh.
So they're the furry hominids that lived on this planet before us. They didn't drop down in some spaceship and all of a sudden, put up shop out in the forest. They're the ones, because let's just go this way, go way back when, and I won't turn this into a huge story, but when the human DNA, and it's already been shown this happened, started getting modified, it's not like, and I'll have fun with this, Karen, they netted up every human on the planet and caught them all and did it, and they started then evolving out from there. No. There were the natural ones here, the Sasquatch people. They're people. They were living here, and they're still the ones that here. And because they do live close to nature, I like, this is going to be, I have to invent a word here, I think. So extra density. It's not even extra dimensional. It's a density thing. Because when we think dimensions, we think, well, you got to go off to that dimension in different vicinity of the galactic, this, that, or the other. No, it's a density. You change your phase and you can go what we call invisible. And that's what Sasquatch can do. Just like a fan on your desk, an air fan, if you turn it on, the blades start turning, they go invisible. You can't see them. No, they're just moving too fast out of phase for our visual spectrum, so we don't see them with our eyes. That's what Sasquatch do. They change the frequency of their aura and they go out of phase. And we all scream, they're invisible. They've jumped dimensions. They went off the visual spectrum.
Oh, I love this. Okay, so they just are off the visual spectrum, but they're still there. So we can bump into them.
Yeah, you can bump into them, and they're just changing. They're not the only one that can do this. Bees can do this too, but they change. It's a whole change of frequency. You're not and I know you know that you're not your body. And them too. You're a light entity having in their case, a Sasquatch experience, a vehicle of a Sasquatch. So they adjust their self, which is, only 10% of reality is physical. 90% is metaphysical. Us humans forget that. We think all these trinkets, like that piece of shungite I'm knocking on my desk, that's reality. That's 10%. And I wouldn't get into the physics of it, but they're not even touching each other, the molecules. Metaphysical realities we all working with our emotions, our psychic senses, our empathic feelings. No, they're just in tune with that. So yeah, they go out of phase.
Now, this is kind of probably a 3D question because my little brain needs to line it up. So, they could be at a higher frequency, which is why they know how to do that with their aura and disappear. When I used to work with an animal communicator, when there were lost animals, there were so many times where we were sure they were, I don't know if you even want to say jumping time loops or going invisible and then popping back up. And I'll always use the example of there was a dog that the woman put a sweater on the dog and the dog escaped. And 3 months later, the dog comes back with the sweater still on, with the sweater clean, which means someone would have had to take that dog, fed the dog, took care of the dog, washed the sweater, and then sent him back out. And that's not really what happened. So I think that these maybe even cats, were you saying cats can also sort of do that invisibility cloak sort type thing?
Now it's a hard thing to talk about, so it's hard to say yes or no. So technically, any entity, and we're all entities, can do these. It depends on our understanding level. So they're not abilities. It's not a thing. So let's just call it frequencies and densities. They're all there all the time. So now it's whether the entity realizes that they can use their metaphysical 90% of themselves aspects to access those things. So yes, it can happen, but it's not everybody all the time. They have to have the realization. There are no, and I'll make fun of it because people have asked me, Derek, how'd you reach psychic level 5? And of course, for the listeners, there is no psychic level 5. There's no, but I have to have some way of describing this. I'm like, no. I'm not anything. I had an epiphany or an aha moment that helped me access the stuff that was already there. It's not that all of a sudden I downloaded this magical frequency or heard the one special podcast on the internet that made me this, out of the other. There were realizations or epiphanies that made me have those aha moments. And that's when we turn on the abilities. But they already have access to that. So I'm a cheater. For the listeners who don't know, I'm called a seer in some societies. I can actually, it's a play words here, visually with my third eye, and yes, it overlays in physical, the metaphysical aspects of this reality. So I call it my woo-woo vision. So, and I'm not the only one that can do this.
Right.
So I can turn in and I can see auras, I can see entities, all this stuff that we all think isn't real just because it's out of phase with our visual spectrum, that little tiny frequency range that our eyes can see. You go off that, it's invisible. It doesn't exist. No. And again, we just all have to keep remembering things like that. But yeah, they can do that. So some cats can do that. I think you said it was a dog in that case. So what would happen in that case? And I can tune into that, and I already was where you were telling the story. I'll just say, and we all have, I like to train spirit guides. We can call them guardians, angels, whatever. So even animals have spirit guides, of course. So he had that little critter had some help with manifesting that. I think he said it was sweater and back into it. So that stuff can happen. I mean, thing can bilocate. Objects move. It's just taken out of this physical. And once it's out of the, again, my play of words here, the physical limitations, it can be moved from A to B, and B could be in China from my office here in Washington. It makes no difference. You're talking on the quantum level. It just manifests over there. So it's not like it has to be teleported like, Star Trek. No, it's a song. I mean, it's just kind of the internet. I know it's a hard thing to wrap our heads around because it's kind of out there.
Well, I'm thinking if you're a usual listener for my podcast, you're following right along. And another thing, it's interesting because I think when we limit ourselves, for example, what you're saying, you kind of had an epiphany and you got it. And I would say, you know what? I studied tarot forever until I just knew it, which maybe I could have had an epiphany and done it faster. But, we think, or I thought, I have to learn it all. And then you start to trust it and it just happens, I think. Couple of weird questions. Do you think, because I will have days, they can be travel days, where I am sure at certain points no one sees me, and this would be an accident. It's not. I wouldn't be trying it, but there are days where people are walking into me or looking right through me and banging into me. Now, maybe that's just a day of everybody being distracted. But do you think sometimes as people we do that ourselves by mistake?
That's not a weird question. That's funny. That came up funny because somebody asked me this in a session the other day about it, and I explained to them how I do it. And I'll use an example. So the answer is yes, you can do it. And I do it here in Mystical Wares. So this is a big physical store for those that, again, don't know about kind of thing. And I have to move in here, and there's customers that know who I am. And so often I need to get, from point A to point B and hopefully, not get too distracted or interrupted. So I have to go invisible some days. And what I do is exactly that. And I won't get too much into this recipe because it is on our YouTube channel, like Karen mentioned. It's a free class I give called Inner Expansion. But I talk about a whole armoring process. And in my case, I use what's called a buckyball or a fullerene. It's a soccer shape, ties into the shungite thing. So what I'm really doing there is I'm setting an intention of being in a container that's out of phase with whatever's not good for me at the time. So literally, and I'll be blunt 3D here. I'll chill out of my office room now. And by the way, when I say imagine everyone, and again, like Karen mentioned, everybody's kind of gets what we're saying here if they're listeners to Karen's show. Your imagination and your emotions are how you affect the metaphysical reality. Again, 90% of this stuff in reality we work with is called metaphysical. We don't have a rock and hammer to use or a bucket we can use. Nope, we use and your imagination is real, of course. Your imagination is literally real, and your emotions, and that's been shown by physics. I mean, I'll kind of go off route here for a quick second. And again, everybody listening probably knows it, but I'll have fun with this too. Stuck 2 plants on a table, some scientists, and it's been done hundreds of times now. Talked nice to one, maybe cursed out, talked meanly to the other, and the one flourished, the one wilted. That's a thing. And I went quickly just because I think everybody listening knows that. So all we need to do, remove that, is, well, wait a minute, plants don't have ears. So, emotions and imagination affected that plant. And by the way, the same thing will happen to a goldfish, your kid, anything. So what you do is use those tools, imagination and emotion. So I imagined I was in a soccer ball of love. Sounds corny, but love is the strongest energy. I'm in a soccer ball of love, and I'm going to be able to walk from A to B and not be seen. And I got all excited inside. Not like I'm jumping up and down, but I'm like, heck yeah, this happened. Emotions. And it happened. And I'll tell you, Karen, guess what that's also called? That's called the placebo effect. Join a club. That's called a religion. And then they call it a miracle. I don't care what they call this, if it's placebo or miracle or energy work, we can all do it. Once we have that aha moment, like I'm trying to share right now, let everybody go, well, wait a minute. I have an imagination. I have emotions. It's not just crazy Derek that can imagine a invisible soccer ball of love and he made it from A to B. And I'll tell you, it's like riding a bike. Just get on, do it. And the more confident you are, the more, again, placebo effect, that's a real thing. And everybody thinks, oh, fake sugar cube. The cube, of course, the sugar cube didn't heal the person. The person's imagination and emotions that they received the magic fix worked. That's a thing. Why do we all not think of that? We're like, everybody just regards the placebo effect. I'm like, and I'm having fun with this. Fool, that's the proof of, air quotes, miracles in your reality. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, so, but, and I find, because, I didn't see it for the first time and realize it either. So I'm having fun with this, but I like to use me as an example going, well, once I got over it, I realized, I'm like, oh, it literally is, and I'm not pulling punches here, your imagination, emotions, go at it. That's how you affect reality. And I did it as an example in a class where somebody was in another part of the store and they weren't paying attention, but there's a distance. So long story short, I imagined that I was like, tapping the bottom part of what's called earlobe of this person. There's a friend of mine. So, and all of a sudden, and I knew he was an energy sensitive, but again, we all are. So we all perceive this on one level or another. And the more you're aware of it, the more you feel this stuff. I showed them as an example. Look, I can just kind of tap his ear right there. And I was, 50 feet away. So you couldn't even hear what I was saying. And all of a sudden he's grabbing his ear and things like that. So I'm just saying you can affect the 10% of reality we call physical with your metaphysical senses.
Yes.
And I kind of, and then, it's called chakras too, by the way. Everybody calls them chakras. Those are your metaphysical senses. If you think of them like that, that's what they turn into.
Yes, they did. When I took a class with a parapsychology class, they called in. I don't know if you remember the very first Wide World of Sports, folks. That was on the weekends, and that was what you got. You got the Wide World of Sports, and they had a guy karate chop a brick in the beginning, and the teacher's father. I'm hacking this story pretty good, but saw on the video that brick was clearly breaking before the hand was hitting it. And they called him in and they did tests, and somebody else would be in another room and he would use his chi to push the person in the other room. And it was just pretty fascinating at the Rhine Institute, where they did it all by, they have tests. They don't take anything. They make sure everything has a scientific test behind it. And hold on one second. Hold that thought, Derek. Come right back to that. Okay, hold on.
Hi, I'm Becca. I'm an energy healer. In a session, I use intuition and conversation to help people remove blocks and allow healing of all kinds to happen. I help people with things like relationships, making sense of their awakening process, or beginning to heal a chronic illness. My favorite thing to do is help people remember who they are. I also do intuitive nutritional counseling, which combines my experience as a nutritional therapy practitioner with my intuition to help you heal your energy related to food. I do sessions over the phone or on Zoom. If you go to my website and feel a little buzz of resonance, I know a session will be beneficial. Check it out by going to regenerativelife.farm.com and click on the Energy Healing tab, because I'm also a regenerative farmer. That's regenerativelife.farm.com/energy-healing. Remember who you are.
Okay. So, yeah, so your energy affecting others, that is in one of your classes. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and that's the thing I also teach is that it's nothing anybody has to learn to do these different exercises. I know it's again a play of words. It's something you have to realize. So then you have to learn, you have to realize. And when you have your Neo in the Matrix moment, so for those that have seen Matrix, which is probably everybody, I would think, where he's standing in the hallway and he gets up from the floor and they're shooting a bunch of bullets at him and he holds up his hand and just has the aha realization and the bullets stop in midair and drop. That's a thing, as I like to, somewhat jokingly call it, that we just need to realize he didn't shoot magic invisible energies at that. It was all in his head. He realized, wait a minute, I literally control reality with my thoughts. And I'll just say, strongest player in the room has the most effect. So for the one that knows it, not has extra abilities or reached a guru Bob up on the mountaintop or was a vegetarian for 50 years, and I'm not making fun of these things because I am a vegetarian. I'm just saying these aren't things that have to be done. Sometimes they're things that will help you get to the realization. So it's all good. It's all school. But it's literally a realization. And that's why I referenced the Neo moment, because Neo walked up. He didn't like whoosh the air. He didn't do a hardcore breathing exercise. And I'm not just saying breathing exercises. They're great. I'm just saying it's always in those things that gets you to the realization. If somebody's led to do some kind of ayahuasca trip or whatever their deal is, it's not that does it. It's that makes you aware that there's more.
Yes, people don't realize levitation. Like yogis have been levitating for years. And I did meet someone and he said he kind of knew how to do it and he taught his kids to do it, but he couldn't explain, which I'm sure maybe he was over explaining, but I find it interesting. People go to real yoga retreats and the yogi will levitate over and plop himself in front of you. So it is real and interesting. And before you start accepting bullets like Neo, what's interesting? This has always fascinated me, and I haven't been able to do it yet, which is spoon bending. Because in that paranormal class, they were talking about teaching spoon bending, and they had a couple of things that they said. First of all, when someone bends a spoon, they look at it under a microscope, and it looks as though, like, if you broke a spoon, the elements would be shattered or have sharp pieces to them under the microscope. But anytime they look at a spoon that a human has bent under the microscope, it is as though it was heated and bent. So it's even a different, okay, this is even something more interesting. But also, the people I know that really have done it was that moment right before they either twisted it or whatever, and the thought was, oh, I can do this. And it worked. And sometimes it's holding that thought. Have you ever done a spoon bending class?
I haven't done a class. I absolutely do spoon bending. And for some people want to look in this, Google it later. You can look in a person called Uri Geller. He's not the only one, and he can move clocks, this, that, and the other. So I got into that years ago. He's on Johnny Carson. Yeah, there's a spoon bending thing in Matrix, isn't there? One of the Matrix movies. Yeah. What it is, and anybody could do it, and it does. It'll heat up in your hand. I can hold, excuse me, a piece of metal, focus on it, somebody else will grab it, and it'll be not so hot that red hot they can't touch it, but like measurably, because you can get a thermometer gun and shoot it and have it go up. What you're doing, and this ties us back to the kind of physics we were talking earlier on the 10% 3D comment. Nothing is actually touching. That's just physics. It's like I have a pen in front of me here. The molecules and atoms that make up that pen are not actually touching, and that's a thing. And I'm only bringing that up because we all think, oh, a physical object. No. And if we just have that aha moment, you don't have to explain it to the level of some scientist and go, well, there's molecular cohesiveness and blah, blah, blah. You don't need to know that. It just has to be, oh, it's a thing. And I'm saying this so that I'm speaking in layman's terms so we all know we all have these abilities. They're not gifts. They're abilities and understandings. Every one of us is a psychic, an empath, a healer. So on the pen I was talking about, or let's go back to the spoon, you look at the energy around the spoon. That's what you manipulate, not the spoon. So for somebody trying to bend the spoon, if they just keep doing that, all right, well, hold your breath. Good luck. But if you get to the point in your head where you're realizing it's energy, then you'll have a result. You manipulate the energy around the spoon is what you're heating up, and that's why the heat happens. It's not even a spoon.
Oh, they said they're always. He said, I don't know how this meant. I'm probably hacking it up, so I should have him on the podcast to talk about it. But he said something that they almost like you're suddenly jumping to a timeline where the spoon was already bent. I don't know if that throws it off or whatever, but it's okay. Focusing on the energy outside. Would you sort of focus on the energy between the molecules in the spoon also, or that's going too far?
No, okay. Now the visualization is whatever the little human, and I'm not saying I'm saying for all of us, from our limited perspectives, want to do. So work with our visualizations, whatever that is, because it's your intent. Those are different things that really matter. So if you want to visualize, well, I want to see the molecules shake so hard they get hot and they're moving, blah blah blah, because that's the thought process. Good, go with it. That'll work. Or if you just want to think, I want to think butterflies flying all around that spoon and they're all smiling, singing. I know, weird, singing songs. Okay, it doesn't matter because that person's intent is for those invisible butterflies. So I'm kind of going weird there. So people can go, you do you, whatever you want, as long as your intention is that the spoon is, here's the kicker, already bent, Karen. It's not bending. Don't bend a darn thing. The spoon is bent, have it match that reality that we can already manifest with our placebo effect, our imagination and emotions. So get freaking excited that you just bent a spoon, and all of a sudden you can go, oh shit, I bent a spoon. You're
Yes.
gonna, I know. I'm not, sorry about that. Get a little, my language on here.
Oh no, that's okay. You can say whatever you want.
Okay. But that's what I'm saying. That's how it happens. Literally, it's not, oh, I went to this secret society and I've been to what they call secret schools and mystery schools and blah, blah, blah. And I've met gurus and they saw me too, I'll say. And they could see my energies like I could see theirs. And I walked out of the classroom, let me put it that way to be nice. And I saw, a bunch of fluff and BS. I'm a blunt guy, for those who don't know me. Very direct, very blunt. That's what I'm saying. We can all do these things. It's just an understanding and another way of looking at it. So yes, we can all grab that spoon and bend it, just get excited and know that it already happened, and then it'll go. And then, by the way, it's like riding a bike. Once you do it and you realize you have that moment, go, oh, wait, I can ride a bike without having to focus on the balance and this, that, and the other. I just get on it and go. That's the deal. That's a space we need to get to heal a hurt ankle or bend a spoon that we just want to have bent. That's what we do to woo.
Now, last time I talked to you, I talked about, and I found this so fascinating, and you had explained it pretty well. But for people who don't know, there's a phenomenon called missing 411, or there's a really good one on, I think it's on Netflix or Prime, that is missing 411 hunters. Where hunters in the woods are suddenly gone, where you could be 20 feet and you turn around and this other person is gone, and they don't always find them, but sometimes they'll find their clothes were folded at a different space. They'll cover a space over and over and nothing is there. And then the next day, the person's shoes are there. And there's a weird one that I want to ask about because you explained this pretty interesting. The only person that they have found that came back from this, and this ties, I think, into Bigfoot, was a little girl walking through a woods or a canyon or something. It was like a national, it wasn't a hidden thing. They weren't off. It was like a national park or something. And the little girl disappeared instantly, which of course, everyone, now it's a little kid. So now you got park rangers, everybody looking. They found the girl probably an hour later or some amount of time on a different mountain where someone else found her, and there was no way other than like a helicopter that she could have been transported to this place. And when they asked her what happened, she said like a giant dog took her hand. And so I know and the reason I'm saying this is I know you talk about an overlay. I wonder if that was like a Bigfoot being helpful. Like, first of all, let's go back one. So when this happens and people disappear, again, I would always say dimension. You said there's an overlay. Can you explain that?
Yeah, and actually a good description or analogy for that would be a radio. So it's like right now in my office, if I turned on an AM FM radio, I could hit my button. I'd have some country music, hit another button or turn the dial. I got blues. I got rap. It's all here all the time, no matter what. It's where your focus is. That's the thing. So same thing in this mountain scene where either picking a hunter or this girl or whatever, all those realities, they're not dimensions. So when we think dimension, we think a physical space, a place to go. Did I need to physically move my radio in this office to jump to the rap music if I wanted to jump to rap from country to disco, whatever the deal is? No, of course, is the answer. So the reality overlays, the frequencies or densities are all always there. She was open enough to pick up on the other ones. And so she crossed into that. That song on the record is another way you can put it, kind of thing. And you're not limited. So once you're on those ones, you can jump. It's like a playlist of songs. You can jump around anywhere. You don't have to go from, have to, like you said, physical from one mountaintop to another. No, you're I don't know how to explain that thing, because our minds go to physical limitations. But it's not, and that's why the hunters. Before I get back to the little girl, let's say Hunter was out there and he was not a nice person out there wanting to hunt Sasquatch or something or other. And let's say he came in this area. There's different reasons for these areas, but where there's a merging of the two radio stations. Let's say in this area, for whatever reason, the country and the disco radio stations, because we've all heard that, bleed over. That's a thing here in this reality too. So if all of a sudden Hunter, I'll just call him Bob. Hunter Bob's out there walking around, and he picks up on a glitch in the matrix and sees this other reality. Well, if he focuses too much on that reality, he's going to get in line with that. And then all of a sudden, to us in this country station, he heard the disco music. He jumped on the disco channel. He's gone. He's invisible. Blah, blah, blah. That's how it goes. Because if his focus is on that density, that's where everything follows, including his physical. I know. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and when these guys don't come back, what do you have any, like, what are they on a different channel where their family is still there? It looks the same, but it's, what do they experience there?
Not usually. So that's, So, and the ones I've looked, because I've been, during sessions on some of these ones, so they all vary, but no, sometimes, again, it depends on the person, but no, it's a whole different reality. So it's not like we think multiverse on like Marvel, to where, there's a different version of my daughter and son. And that. I'm not saying that stuff doesn't happen, but in this case, we're talking about something else. We're in the same reality, just on a different, again, we have to have a way of talking about this, radio station. So no, they kind of often, if they're the ones that don't come back, we're talking about that scenario, let's say, well, no, they're in that density, or again, station, and no, they're stuck there or whatever. I've seen people leave, go out etherically, so in their energy form, and kind of get stuck in between, and then the guides come in and help them out and bring them on a little further out in frequency. Because remember, it's hard to talk about this because we all think physical is a place, and then there's this place, and it's not that. We're a better way to kind of wrap our heads around and think we're a radio, and we're just tuning the dial. And let's say we're on AM radio. Well, FM would be what we call the other side or death and things like that. It's so difficult to talk about, Karen, because, we're limited perspective,
right?
Humans.
Right.
But to answer your question, some of if they're not positive even that's tough to say because it's relative. Overall, generally positive and best for this environment kind of thing. Yeah, they can get lost in other areas, but there are not so nice entities too. So I don't want to skirt around that. There are, again, I'll say it, have fun with this, bad guy entities that have done things too. So it's everything. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a big denial of bad guy entities right now and I'm kind of like, I don't know if you believe
no, there are.
There's the light comes from shining on the dark. In fact, I almost wondered if, several days later, the clothes showing up all folded or something like that is almost a trickster just to throw everybody off.
And that's a good point to bring up, because there are so many facets to something like this, and we can run anyway in our limited imagination, because we only have so many parts of the puzzle down here to put it together. And I can tune in psychically on any one circumstance and see, but it is everything you're saying, the whole gambit. It comes in all of those things. And by the way, there are dog people. They look like huge dog men with a dog head. I mean, what the heck? So, and that was in this case, it wasn't a Sasquatch. Sometimes, Sasquatch will help. But yeah, there are dog people too. That's the thing.
Wow, that's interesting. I know someone that kind of remote viewed the fairies, and she was like, "They keep telling us to clean up our act." And I was like, "What is that?" And she's like all the ghosts that are in their area, they want us to get them out. And I thought that's kind of funny. That makes sense. Um, that's fascinating. And also, you're right. I'm okay with I always talk about I'm vegan, but I'm okay with the hunter that was grateful for the deer or whatever they found. And you know what I mean? And like the Native Americans used to use every part and were so grateful and almost worshipped this animal that gave them nourishment. And there's a lot of sport hunting that might come across as not so good in that sort of area, maybe, huh?
Yeah, animals eat animals. That's clearly a thing down here in the physical realms. But if you go at it remember, everything's intention. So again, I always call everybody Bob when I go out there. So Hunter Bob, not to offend anybody who's actually a hunter named Bob, but going out there with, I'm going to kill every little critter that moves, and I've got my new shiny shotgun to, blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, there's an intention. Wonder what kind of reality he's going to experience. Because we all know, like drug, like in this reality. That's a thing. It's been proven by physicists. Not that scientists know everything, but very limited understanding there. But what they do figure out is worth paying attention to, especially when it lines up with the woo-woo realms. And it does.
Yes. I'm gonna make a big you know what? Let's take a break and then I'm gonna come back with a big generalist question and then we're gonna get back to Sasquatch. Okay, so hold on folks, we'll be right back.
Discover Moon Mama Shop, an inspiring metaphysical enterprise rooted in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Founded by Kenzie, a gifted 5/1 projector in human design, this burgeoning business is a testament to her innate ability to read people. Specializing in Reiki, tarot, and oracle readings, Kenzie brings profound insight and healing to her clients. Certified in Holy Fire Reiki 1 and 2, Kenzie is on her journey towards mastering this transformative practice. Whether you're in Grand Rapids or beyond, experience the soothing energy of her home studio for in-person sessions, or opt for virtual sessions for the same immersive experience from the comfort of your own home. Kenzie's approach is deeply trauma-informed, drawing from her own healing journey to create a safe space for others to release energy blockages and realign their chakras. Each session includes a personalized written report detailing her findings and intuitive messages received. For those seeking guidance through tarot or oracle readings, Kenzie offers convenient email consultations, allowing you to revisit the messages over time. Explore her offerings and pricing at moonmamashop.com and stay connected on Instagram and TikTok at moonmamashop.
So I kind of have a little bit of theory on what's changing the world. And I know you live in a positive space and that's great. And I feel like when the world, which it is there's a lot of war right now. There's a lot of things really being believed, I'll say too, that the icky things have a lot to eat right now. They are a little bit powerful. And I don't believe like individually, like I'm not worried about anything icky. And I think if you stay positive and keep your energy clear, you really shouldn't worry, But do you feel like that in the world, like in other places, the dark things have a lot of icky energy right now? They're getting a little bit of momentum.
Oh, that's without a doubt from my perspective too. But here's where I do the spin. Well, I mean, how the heck do you learn without a rub? You got it. There has to be, and that doesn't mean, well, then why did that person do that to this one? Why did that? I mean, we can go on forever on that. You're not, but I'm just saying that can be a thing too. Then you have to zoom in down to the individual level. Did that bring it down to the two entities having whatever experience has happened that didn't look good to us, let's say? Well, that one needed to learn that energy. But it's always the classroom. Not all of us I hated math class. So if I go on math class, I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, you got to learn your lesson sort of thing. We're here for a reason. And that's a whole nother podcast in itself. Mm-hmm. But yeah, without the opposite, the yin, the yang, the negative, the positive. And remember, like we said already, everything's relative. So positive to one, is it positive to another or negative to another? It's the same thing. It's, I like vanilla ice cream. Maybe you like chocolate. And I know that's minimizing some of the bad stuff happening out there. I get it. But again, we all chose to jump in a vehicle, let's call it, because remember, not our bodies, everybody. These are vehicles we're having an experience in. So let's call it the bumper cars at Disneyland. you're going to get out of the bumper car, but you got in it. So learn some lessons. And if that's to bump into bumper cars, bump into some. If it's to avoid them, learn to avoid them. But how are you going to learn if you don't get in the bumper cars? You don't get to sit outside of the ride. That I'm working with this analogy here, Disneyland, and go, well, I've mastered the bumper cars without jumping in them and taking some bumps.
Yeah.
No, you haven't.
Yep.
No, yeah, shit had to happen. And I don't, not trying to minimize anything, because life can be, cruel. But if we change our perspective, there's always something we can get from it.
Yes. Now you are starting a podcast, or already started, Bigfoot sightings, Sasquatch sightings, right?
Yeah, the whole new. So we don't have any published yet, but yeah. So the webpage is called thesasquatchstories.com. And it's because I have a lot of them, and I have a lot of friends that have seen Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Like I mentioned earlier, my dad, and then I've had sightings. So they're a thing. I don't mean just with my woo-woo vision. Ooh, psychic Sasquatch running through the woods. And I've seen all that too and communicated with them, with people with me. I'm talking about just thumping around in 3D, being, physical as well. So, so we get into that. We're going to have fun with it and start up a podcast. And then I've got the webpage, like I said, thesasquatchstories.com. And I mentioned that because on that page, I've got, for listeners later, tons of stuff, not just stories and sightings, and the original Patterson Gimlin film, as it's called. But we've got records from the FBI acknowledging Sasquatch, the U.S. Forest Service, the USDA. I've republished all those on that website. And then even, here's the kind of interesting part, Karen, that I went through. This was a long time. Some of the articles from newspapers from the 1800s. And of course, Bigfoot wasn't a word back then, other than somebody telling a friend that you got a Bigfoot. It was wild man or this, that, and the other back then, before the term Bigfoot was coined. So you got to look into it like that. But I've posted, 30, 40, 50 of them, of actual newspaper clippings, because these can be pulled from newspaper archives online, where they've acknowledged what we now call Bigfoot or Sasquatch in a lot of different ways. So I'm basically archiving that online, sharing it. And then we're going to start that podcast you mentioned.
Yeah. And it was Wild Man, that may have even come from the Native Americans, did it?
Yeah, they were one of the ones that did it. And then, of course, the settlers and everybody else who came over. And, even that, we're far from the first groups of people on this continent. Oh, my gosh. Mm-hmm. That's just from the last reset. So, yeah, they've been around, talked about.
There was a comic who, and this is one of those things also too, you have to be ready. There was a comic, this was many years ago, I can't even remember who it was, but he was he was part of the original searching for Bigfoot movement, really looking for him, and the whole thing ended when he found one, and he kind of came face to face with one. And it's that funny thing where everyone wants to say, get out your camera, or blah, 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 why didn't you take a picture? And it was just so mind-blowing to him. It didn't traumatize, well, I guess it did, but he didn't do it anymore because he was just like, I can't even explain what it's like to just be face-to-face with something like that and just get it. You know what I mean? Like, it would scare people, wouldn't it?
Oh, it would, especially if you just walk up on them and you turn them. I had, as soon as yesterday, but I have this stuff all the time. Just the howls yesterday, the yelling, because I have and I should probably tell you the next story too. It came up on a cemetery. But we can do that if you want to. I was out yesterday on one of those new e-bikes, an off-road e-bike. So I was testing it out in the mountains. I live in the Cascade Mountains, like I mentioned up here. So I can go way out in the boonies where there's nobody. And I was testing this thing, and I had them yelling back and forth, but that's not that uncommon. In fact, this is the first time I even mentioned yesterday, because it happens so often around here that I don't bother even telling my wife about it. So yeah, they're all over the place. When you go out there, you could definitely get startled because you're not used to entities that big. So up here, there's a lot of bears. There's all kinds. So I'd come up on those, but bears are small to the Sasquatch that I've seen. I don't know if you want to get into any of those stories.
Sure, go ahead.
And actually, I'll tell you something a little kind of off the Sasquatch, but please bring me back around to mine and my dad's story. But what happened 2 days ago, because this is Paranormal Karen, I was on the same, so I was here locally, and I'm going to kind of spell out some of the specifics for locals that know, but I was at Northern State Hospital. It's an abandoned, they used to call it an insane asylum. They used to call it lots of good names.
Everything is always at those. Those are the best.
Oh my gosh. And how the realities merge there. But again, like I keep joking, that's a whole nother podcast too. I was on this one, and this is one that's been shut down. It's been over 100 years, currently not running because there was torture. There's a lot of bad stuff going on, like that happens at these places. So their graveyard, because a lot of people passed during those times here, was lost, abandoned, grown over. Long story short, so locally here in the last few years, I'm going to go fast through the parts that aren't really pertinent. Locals who still have relatives, of course, nearby, started finding it. So there's an area in this mountainside that I've been riding this e-bike. And I'm saying e-bike so that, it's really quiet. I'm going slowly. And they've started to recently uncover this area. And I know where it is because I've been in there. So I know that this spot is where, and there's not gravestones because they would put little markers in the ground that just kind of sunk down and got buried. So they're literally walking around like metal detectors and little metal rods, probing, trying to identify the markers and re-acknowledge the cemetery. So, and I bring all that up for a reason. So I'm riding my bike and I come up, I don't know, 20 feet from that area, and I know where it is. So I know it's coming up on it. And all of a sudden, and there's nobody around me, I hear a young girl, so maybe teenager or 20-something, screaming at the top of her lungs. And I remember I said e-bike, so it's really quiet. I'm not like on my motorcycle or something noisy. Screaming, help me, somebody help me. And I'm like, what the? And I cram on, the brakes. I stop. And to my left, for the visual experience here for people, on the left where the screaming was, where the girl's screaming at me, it's about 4-foot long weeds and just brush and blackberry bushes. Mountains, that stuff is everywhere. Thick underbrush up here in the Northwest, just for those that don't know. And then about 100 feet ahead of me is a little dirt area parking lot where they're trying to build it up for, again, new or family members that are finding the graves and come acknowledge them. So I stop. I'm like, oh, shoot, how am I going to get in there and save this girl? Or I don't know what's going on at this point. So then I see up ahead of me a car in that pull-out area I told you about. So I hit the button on this e-bike and it goes pretty quick, gets me up there in a matter of seconds. Because I'm thinking, now for those that don't know, I'm a retired correctional officer. So I'm a prison guard for 16 years in maximum security. And I'm ex-military guy and a commercial deep sea divers. And I'm only bringing all that stuff up quickly. So just think kind of out there doing stuff,
helping people.
Yeah. Okay. I like to say not the shyest guy on the planet. So I'm thinking, okay, so I'll go again, have fun with the story. I'm thinking, okay, bad guy in the car ahead of me just threw his girlfriend or whatever the deal is. I'm not going spelling the story that much. I'm thinking bad guy dumped a person, gonna get him because yep, I'm that guy. I'm gonna come up on you. I'm gonna pull you out of your car and go what needs to be done from there too. Didn't go there, but I'm just saying that's what's in my head. I'm like, oh shoot, I got to stop him. And then I also know at the same time I have to go to that direction just to access this area where I thought this guy threw this girl. So and this was yesterday. And I pull up there and all of a sudden I get closer and I realize I'm looking in the car because it's about a 12-point turnaround to get the car out of this little area. I'm like, oh, it's a girl, a young girl in the car, and she's crying. And remember, this happens in seconds. So I pull up, don't even get all the way to the car because I'm watching. I'm thinking, okay, is there two guys? They're going to do it, blah, blah, 3D story.
Right.
I'm trying to prep myself. So I'm looking at the distance and go, oh, shoot, young girl, hit the brakes. And I can see she's crying. And I glance to my left. I see the area they've cleared for the cemetery already. And I see some fresh flowers. So then, obviously, one and one click, I start realizing in my head what's going on here. Well, I guess it's not that clear yet. The girl was there. And so I stopped, let her drive away because all she sees, the girl in the car, is some crazy guy coming at her literally 30 miles an hour on an electric bike coming in from the boonies, nowhere. She's like, what the heck? So I tone it down. I'm like, nope. She pulls away, whatever's going through her head. I'm not reading her at the time. And then instantly I get what we can call download because I'm like, well, this isn't what happened. What happened? I literally said that in my head. Oh, jeez, there goes my ear. My ears are like just rang off the hook. And then, everybody listening knows the tinnitus-like symptoms doesn't mean you're going deaf. There's always a physical aspect to it, but it's the woo-woo frequency. So when I'm visualizing it, that's what happens. Anyway, I realized it's a young girl that was dead. It was a spirit, a ghost, call it whatever the heck you want.
Oh.
Who was so here, now I'll zoom out and kind of tie this puzzle pieces together. Because I realized this some years ago on how this works. When somebody focuses on you, so let's say somebody dies, whoever, and they pass on because it's going to happen to all of us. And let's say somebody focuses on you, well, you kind of tune that person in. It's called quantum entanglement, or we're all connected. So basically, that young girl in the car, the living human, was out there acknowledging, and it was 2 generations past, because I checked and chatted with the deceased girl. We had a little conversation. We get out if you want, but because I had to tie it all together. And she says, "Yeah." So I'm like, so she was acknowledging it. She said they found Aunt so and so's grave, so she went out to acknowledge it and drove away. So that was the whole story in 3D. But because the younger girl was the aunt of this girl, even though they're the same age, if that makes sense. Okay. So because she was being acknowledged, and I gotta change my terms here. The aunt, even though she was 27 years old, was pulled back into this time frame or density by the human acknowledging them, and she didn't know she died. The aunt. So when I started, so she got pulled between the radio stations to bring her back earlier, and then we're chatting, and it wasn't random that crazy woo-woo Derek is driving by on his bike at this moment. Of course, it's obviously called a synchronicity, and that was all meant to be because they know I'll stop and help the young girl spirit, who I'm calling an aunt. Okay, just to keep it together. I'll chat with her because I know it's a thing. So I did the whole medium thing. We chat. She gave me a story. She goes, "I don't know what's going on, blah, blah, blah." We went in the story. So I'll go quickly on this one. I put in a container of love and just shared frequency. And then they decide where they go. So I don't drive around to listeners thinking, "Oh, a cemetery. Derek's going to go in and just start sending everybody here, there, and wherever." That's not what I do, everyone. So, but if an entity pops in and acknowledges me, chats with me, and tells me the story, obviously it was a meant to be sort of thing. And this one was like painfully obvious. So that stuff happened out there just yesterday. Yes. It's in the same area. Yeah. So I wanted to bring that up to you.
Now, do you think you audibly heard her through clairaudience, or if somebody else was there, they would have heard the scream also? I think just you would hear it.
It was, and that's what freaked me out, because I'm not the best clairaudient. I can do a whole lot of things, and I hear stuff, but this startled me so much because I hear woo-woo stuff all the time. I see it moving in front of me. I can differentiate between the metaphysical and the physical most often. I'm being really specific for a reason, but not always. This girl was so loud and aware that I would have bet the bank that it was physical audio. I know audio is not physical. I get it. But here on the physical realm, but no, it was woo-woo audio. But no, it was so straight to me, unusually strong, that it caught my attention. I actually thought it was a person out there. Because I'll put it this way, I hear dead people all the time, Karen. All the time. Not a big deal. I can chat with them, blah, blah, blah. I know the difference. But if I'm hearing it, you've really got Crazy Derek's attention now. And that's what happened. So I don't think anybody else would have heard it, but it really blew me away. And if I'm telling you it's an unusual metaphysics, it's pretty unusual because I got lots of crazy stories. But that was kind of an odd one. But yeah, anyway.
Interesting. Do you ever feel like because of like the energy of your store, like your store just has great energy, does it attract spirits or ghosts or beings, or does it kind of keep them away because the frequency is so high?
That's an awesome question, and the answer is both, because what happens, and everything happened yesterday, seems like. It was actually last week on this story. But I mean, the life around here, reality, is 100 miles an hour, just to put in a way it's understandable. But yeah, so a friend of mine came in here. He had some entity attachment to him. Let's go with that one, just to get the understanding across. They know to come here because some of these, remember, I make fun of these terms, bad guy entities, or an entity out of alignment with that individual. They can't come in Mystic Warriors. That's not a thing. And I actually push that border to the parking lot level. So I get to see, sometimes, and if I focus, I can see the actual entity, but it's energies or frequency waves or a cloudy haze off on wherever I decided the perimeter was. Like today, we have a in-person metaphysical fair happening behind me. Like I'm in my closed office now, but if I was to walk outside, there's a bunch of vendors out there. I don't know how many customers walking around. So for today, I push I call everything woo-woo, just have fun. The woo-woo boundary out a little further, and I see stuff come off of cars. Cars get attachments.
Wow.
Items get attachments. People do. Or I'll see the opposite, to where that guardian or angel or spirit guide, so I use those terms for the positive ones, come in with their little pet human and have fun with them, and then they'll come in and hang out so they can get closer. And then they'll usually, if I'm walking through the store, I'll always see the human, and I choose to have the spirit guides right above the shoulders, and they go wherever you decide. And I don't know how that works, but they do. They go where I decide to put them in my perspective. So, and they know that, okay, their friend, let's go with this story. Their friend comes in. Let's say you would come here, Karen. You're a bad example because you are so woo. So I need somebody that's not, and you have a lot of guys.
Say somebody's car broke down that is not woo-woo and needs to come in and...
There you go. Okay. They know that there's a woo-woo person in the store that their friend just came in to ask to call AAA or 911 or whatever the drama is. So that guide, I'll see them hazy hanging back, and they'll kind of wave at me. They'll be nice because they're reading me psychically like I'm reading them. They'll know if I'm in angst or if I'm calm enough to where, okay, maybe I'll encourage my little human friend. I just make fun of saying it that way, to go ahead and ask this guy this question, or maybe they're aware. They're sitting in between the radio stations. They're doing that. So sometimes they'll come in, and again, if they're out of alignment with, I'm a country guy, so I like country music. So and I use that as an analogy. So if they're in a music brand or frequency that I'm not in alignment with, they're not going to come in my country club, if you get what I'm saying. Okay, that's not a thing. And then if I see them come in too, because I'll feel it, and that's happened. So I've had, how am I worried? I got to be careful. So people in transition of housing that are having just issues. Some of us are down on our luck. That happens. Okay, so I've had people like that come in that just don't have the wherewithal, and they've just had a rough run of things, and they don't know. And sometimes those people get bad guy entities on them coming in here and encourage you. Yeah, so I've had to deal with that as well. I don't know where to even stop on that story, but it covers the whole array of things there.
Well, you know what, too, and I'm probably asking you this in the last few minutes, and it's probably a bigger story, but even people come into your place and they sit underneath these metal pyramids. And does that help them cleanse too? You know the ones I'm talking about, right?
Yep. Every day they do it. Literally I guarantee you, if I walk out there now, there's going to be somebody in the copper pyramids. I have 2 copper pyramids. For listeners, if they get the gist of it, one's what they call the Russian shape, the tall, pointy one, and one's the Egypt or the Giza, the shorter, fatter, squattier one. I have both of those, 6.5 feet tall, that you can sit in. And it's not just that. There's, 100-pound chunks of rose quartz, big, raw, huge pieces, shungite everywhere. It's an energy space and environment where people literally come to use their intention, imagination, and emotions and heal themselves. That's the thing. And that's what they do. And you can do this in your own house. So everybody doesn't have to make a big, hey, you're welcome, Mr. Wares, come see us. But I'm also saying, it's not that I'm saying you got to come here for my magic pyramid or anything like that. If you don't have a nickel to your name, sit down, relax, imagine you're in an energy container. If it's the pyramid, think of that, or a soccer ball. Just think, I'm in love, I'm happy, I'm positive, I'm healed. That's how you do it. And you just became an energy healer. Everybody. So yes, they do come in here and use those often. It's a great thing to see. In fact, I know we got to go, but this morning, 5 minutes before the podcast, I was rushing because I wanted to get in here. One of our vendors walked in with a little kitten with his eyes not even open yet. He's in the pyramid. And because she's something about the cat, the mama cat, he found it outside his seat. All this happened 5 minutes before the podcast. He came in, he's telling me, I'm like, come on, Robert, I got to go. Sorry, buddy, but tell me. And then he sticks his hands up and I see this little closed-eyed kitten. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I do some energy work on it, get him some towels and, do the stuff that needs to be done. But he's in the pyramid right now with that kitten. I got on camera.
I bet that's adorable.
It is. And he was something about, maybe the mom thought it was
too small,
not going to make it or something. But the heck with that. I got a pile of Reiki Master energy workers out here, all flinging energy and love at them. Oh, no, it'll all be good. We'll have a good outcome for that when I talk to you next.
Oh, that'll be great. And you know what else the animals are very drawn to are those red IR lights. I know we as humans know they help skin and their healing, but animals love them. If the animals love it, it's a great thing.
I've got one. I didn't think of that. Thank you. That kitty's now going to get my little IR light.
Yay!
That's awesome.
All right. Derek, always fascinating and fun talking to you. Tell everyone where they can find you, follow you, see your, send their Sasquatch stories.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We're always all over the place. It's a blast doing the podcast with you, Karen. Yeah, we can be fine. Basically, everything lands at, mystical, and I'll spell it out, mysticalwares.com. So mysticalwares.com. And then there's all the Shungite beehive stuff. You can get free nuggets and all kinds of infos from there. I'll put a link on that site, Karen, deleted thesasquatchstories.com.
Right.
But that address I just said is where you can submit your own Bigfoot story, and maybe we'll have you on the podcast.
Wonderful. All right, Derek, thank you so much for coming on. And I still am trying to work my way back up there to do a show, hopefully doing one at your little, I shouldn't say little, at your new store.
Yeah, that'll happen. Hey, that'll happen when it's meant to, and that's great because we keep improving things around here. So I think we're in a constant state of prep for Paranormal Karen.
Fantastic. All right, thanks, Derek.
Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks to Micah Uno Rising Media. This year's episodes, just this year, has been flawless. I love all of them. Have a great day, everybody.
Paranormal Karen, she's a spooky kind of queen.